Hello there, ninth graders. This is Teacher Krishna, and welcome to our biology class for week number 15. Thank you one more time for coming to the online lesson and for completing all of the exercises that you have had assigned so far. Keep it up, guys. I'm pretty sure that you're going to be learning a lot if we continue working in this way. Right, let's continue. So, just like always, log into Agilix, enter the Google Classroom, download your Word document, and save your Word file inside the biology folder. And remember, you have to name it as it is specified right below. And as we move, remember to take notes on the Word document. That's very important, so you keep track of the most important things from the video and from the PowerPoint presentation. It's always important to start with our ending mind, and for topic 3.02, the ending mind is the following. Differentiate between body cells and gametes by comparing autosomes and sex chromosomes so that he/she can explain how crossing over during meiosis increases genetic diversity and complete the module assessment correctly. I know that it sounds as a very big ending mind for today, but do not worry, we're going to break it down into several parts, and I'm going to explain you every single one of them. So, just like I mentioned, we're going to be studying the process of meiosis today. This process is very similar to the process of mitosis, but there are some key aspects that you need to take into consideration. So, and we are all different thanks to the meiosis process. Notice that in the mitosis process, the topic that we studied last week, we noticed that at first we have one parent cell, and at the end we have two identical cells. Okay, but basically it is different in the meiosis process because you start with one mother cell and then you end up with four different cells. They are not going to be identical as it is in the mitosis process. And everyone has genes and DNA that come from their parents. So something interesting that we need to analyze is that most of our body cells divide through the process of mitosis. If we talk about the cells in your skin, they divide through mitosis. If we talk about the cell of your heart, they divide through the mitosis process as well. But there are some cells that divide through the meiosis process, and those are the gametes or the sex cells. In male, we find the sperm, and in female, we find the egg or the ova. You can call it both ways. So, just like I mentioned, in the meiosis process, and specifically in the sperms and ovas, they don't generate like identical cells, but they have cells with different genetical material. So, for example, here in the picture, we can notice that the kids are a little bit different from their parents. Of course, they have some similarities, but what happens is that when both of their gametes recombine, they create a new combination. So that is why they get, for example, a combination in between the color of the mother's hair and the father's hair, or a combination in between the height of both of the parents, so on and so forth. We have to analyze the process of asexual reproduction. So only one organism is the sole parent and transfers its gene to its offsprings, like in the mitosis process. So, in asexual reproduction, it is not necessary to have two parents, just like we saw it before. You can only have one mother cell, and thanks to the process of mitosis, the cell divides in two. And they are identical all of the time. And we have some types of asexual reproduction. We have a binary fission, and single-celled organisms reproduce through cell division. So an example that I can give you is bacteria. And there are bacteria that only have one cell, and the only way they can reproduce is through the asexual reproduction. And specifically, we talk about the binary fission. We have budding as well. A new mass of living cells grow and divide from the parent. This is something pretty interesting. So let's imagine that you have one organism. So then, like a small bowl or like combination or a group of several cells start forming on the surface of that organism. After a while, when it reaches enough size, then they are going to come apart from the original organism and they are going to turn into offsprings. One example of this budding asexual reproduction could be a hydras. And lastly, we have another type of asexual reproduction, that is a gemulus. So basically, they are like internal buds. So one more time, what happens is that new cells start recombining and creating groups, but this time inside of the organism. And at the end, the parent releases specialized cells that can turn into offspring. So an example of this can be sponges. So I'm going to give you a clear example of the gemulus that we were studying right there. And just like I mentioned the sponges, we have a SpongeBob right here. So what will happen if SpongeBob will have children? So basically, this is the result. Because as I mentioned in the sexual reproduction, what happens is that the born organisms are pretty much equal from their parent. So just like we studied in Gemulus a couple of seconds ago, what happens is that SpongeBob will generate like small SpongeBobs inside of himself. Then when they are ready, they will come out of his body and they will be new organisms, okay? Now we have sexual reproduction. So parents give rise to an offspring that has unique DNA. That is why we are all different, just like I mentioned before. So you are going to get genetical material from your mother and genetical material from your father. And that is going to mix inside a new combination that will be your DNA. That is why you're not like exactly like your parents. You are similar, of course, because all of your genetic information comes from them, but you are not equal to them. Plants and animals reproduce sexually. Yeah, pretty much that means that you need a mother, a father, you need a sperm and an ova in order to recombine the cells and of course create a new organism. We have an interesting term to analyze, which are alleles. They are different sets of genes, and each parent gives an allele to the new generation. And of course, the results are way more variations. I can give you a clear example with my family. So my mother has green eyes. My father has brown eyes. But what happened is that when they had my second sister, the genes of their eyes recombined. And now my sister has a very particular eye color. It's not my mom's and it is not my dad's. So it is a brown that is very light. So it's a very light brown that it reminds me of like a honey color. So one more time, the dark brown gene from my father recombined with my light green gene from my mother, and they generated a new variation from my sister's eye colors. Okay. And continuing with this, I have an example here of sexual reproduction. For example, we have two parent dogs that are golden retriever. You can notice that they have a lot of puppies. So something interesting that I especially liked from this picture was the ears from the puppies. So you can see that the color in the ears of the puppies are not exactly like the dog in the left, and they are not exactly as the dog in the right. So this happens because one more time, the puppies got genetical information from the father, genetical information from the mother, and they recombined inside a way new DNA code, which will be the one that we can see in the color of the puppy's ears. Okay, and now this is an example directly related to us, to humans, and we're going to go by parts. So human cells have 46 chromosomes in two sets of 23. That is what happens when two gametes recombine. So notice that the sperms contain 23 chromosomes and ova's contain 23 chromosomes. And then when they get together, they have a total of 46 chromosomes. Gametes only carry 23 chromosomes. That is correct. And those particular letters that you have right there are the combination of letters that you need in order to get a certain gender. So if we talk about how we can get a male organism, we will need X and Y together. And how is it possible that we get a female organism? By getting XX. So interestingly, what happens is that the person that is always going to determine the gender is the man from both parents, because women are the only ones that have that extra gene, which is Y, X and Y. So in order to get another boy for the next generation, it's necessary to get one more time letters X and Y together. Offspring gets one set of 23 from one parent and 23 chromosomes from the other. Just like I mentioned, 23 chromosomes that are inside the sperm from the father and 23 chromosomes that are inside the ova of the mother. Now we're going to go with some important terms. We have homologous sets of chromosomes. So homologous basically means that there are two pairs of chromosomes. One pair of chromosomes from the father and one from the mother. Gametes, just like I have been mentioning, they are sex cells. There are two types of sex cells, which are sperm from the male organisms and ovas from the female organisms. We have fertilization, fusion of haploid cells. Haploid cells are gametes. We're going to study that specific term later on. But what happens is that if an ova and a sperm get together, they fertilize. We have zygote, a fertilized egg. Exactly. So this is something very interesting to analyze, is zygote. Because imagine from something that is even microscopic, after an egg is fertilized by a sperm, the zygote starts dividing and dividing a lot. So basically, from day one and after 9 months, they are able to produce or generate a living baby from something that is microscopic. And scientists have studied this zygotes and of course the mother cells, but they have not been able to replicate it with science. So that is just how nature is so impressive, because science has not really understood why it is possible for this specific zygotes to divide so fast and so much, because they do a lot until they generate a living baby, of course. Now we're going to represent haploid by a letter N, and this is totally related to mathematics. Okay, we're going to study a little bit of mathematics in here. And diploid as to N. N basically means the total amount that we have, or like the total population. But in this case, we are referring specifically to chromosomes. So we talk about an haploid sex cell will be, for example, a sperm that has 23 chromosomes. Or we talk about the ova that has 23 chromosomes as well. So if we talk about the diploid, like particle or cell, then we will have to multiply the chromosomes times 2. That is why it is D, which means double. So if a sperm and an ova get together, one more time, they form a zygote. And that zygote will not have 23 chromosomes, but it will have 46 chromosomes in total. All right, and here is the process of meiosis. So just like you can notice, it has basically the same steps from the mitosis. interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and cytokinesis. The difference is that this process is going to be repeated 2 times. In the mitosis process, we only generate 2 cells at the end, and they are identical. But in the meiosis process, we generate 4 different cells that are different from each other, respecting, of course, the genetical information that they have inside. So just refresh your mind a little bit. Remember that in the interphase we have the G1 phase, we have the S phase, we have the G2 phase, and basically what happens in there is that the cell grows, it duplicates the genetical information that is inside, it grows a little bit more later, and then it is ready for the mitosis process. Okay. Then right there we have the prophase, where you can notice the difference that I was telling you about last week. In the interphase, the DNA information and the chromatin is just like spaghetti inside the nucleus. It is just spread apart, and there is not something very specific that will be very difficult to divide. But if you notice in the prophase, there are a lot of X's, which are the chromosomes that are already synthesized in the nucleus. So in prophase 1, the chromatin is synthesized into chromosomes and the nucleus breaks down. Metaphase, centrioles move to opposite ends of the cell and spindle fibers attached to the chromosomes. All of the chromosomes are going to line up right in the middle. In the anaphase, what happens is that the chromosomes are torn apart, or they are divided and attracted to opposite ends of the cell. Then in the telophase, the nucleus is generated one more time, and the chromosomes stay inside. Just notice that in the telophase, the genetical information starts turning into our normal chromatin that you will find in a normal nucleus. Okay, lastly, in the cytokinesis, we divide the cytoplasm inside the cell, and we divide the rest of organelles from the cell. And of course, the animal cell will divide just like it's shown in there. Pretty much the same process of the mitosis we studied last time. Then, that was just phase number 1. Then in phase number 2, the same process happens. So, one more time, prophase, we have chromosomes, the nucleus breaks down. Metaphase, chromosomes align. In the anaphase, they separate from each other. Telophase 2, the nucleus forms and the genetical information goes back to normal. The spindle fibers disappear. And in the cytokinesis, then the cells divide one more time. Okay, and the result, as I was telling you, are 4 cells that are different from each other. You can pay attention to the colors in each one. Let's go back to the telophase in number 2. You can notice that in the section that is on the left, we have the colors in the nucleus. Oh, come on, stop going for the next part. I'm sorry, I'm not going to the next part, but I know PowerPoint for some reason wants to take me to the next part. So as I was telling you, in the first part right there, you have the colors sky blue and red in both of them. Okay, and on the right we have blue and red. Blue and green inside the nucleus. So at the end of the cytokinesis, you can notice that the 4 cells are different. You might tell me, hey teacher, but in the ones in the left, there is sky blue and red. Yeah, that is true, but what happens is that in a normal meiosis process, it can happen like that. Like you can get like the same pair of chromosomes in them, but it's more possible that you get different combinations among all of the chromosomes that you have there. Okay, this image is just for educational purposes and for you to understand how everything works. So now we're going to the evaluation. Students have to read and summarize topics, topic 3.02, and please focus on pages 4, 5, 6, and 7. I already summarized most of the content that you can find in the topic, but still I want you to go to those pages right there and of course complement the summary that you already have. And when they finish, they have to take the quiz for the topic. Make sure you take the quiz for topic 3.02. That'll be the evaluation for today. That will be it for today's class, guys. I will be seeing you around. Goodbye.